I'm Liz, and by some twist of fate, I'm married to the most amazing guy I've ever met, Alex. We're both 28, got our own place, pay our bills, and live a life that's ours. It's been a year since we said I do, and honestly, life's been good, except for one little thing, Alex's parents. Now don't get me wrong, I never expected to be the daughter-in-law in shining armor, but I also didn't expect to be the family's unwanted guest. The day I met my in-laws, it felt like walking into a lion's den with a stake tied to my neck. My mother-in-law, Jane, had this way of looking at me like she was trying to figure out if I was more of a nuisance or just plain boring. I could tell she had sized me up and found me lacking before I even had a chance to say, hello. Alex had warned me about his mom. She can be a bit much, he said as we drove to their place that first time, but don't take it to heart, okay? I didn't, or at least I tried not to. At dinner, I was passing the salt when Jane said, "You know, Stephanie used to cook such wonderful meals. Remember that risotto, honey?" She said to Alex, who just nodded, his jaw tight. "Yeah, I remember," he replied, not looking at me. I sat there, salt shaker in hand, feeling like I was invisible. They all talked about Stephanie as if I wasn't there. I felt a pang in my chest, but I swallowed it down with a smile. "Sounds like she was a great cook," I said, trying to seem unaffected. Jane's eyes met mine, and she smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Oh, she was. She was a lot of things, that night. I told Alex how I felt. "It's like she's measuring me against some ghost," I said. Alex hugged me close. "You're the one I chose, Liz. That's all that matters." I wanted to believe him, but as I'd learned, Jane had a long game in mind, and I was the pawn she was eager to sacrifice. I just didn't know it yet. Living with an allergy isn't just inconvenient. It's like having a shadow that's constantly whispering danger in your ear. Since I was a kid, peanuts have been my arch nemesis. It started with a spoonful of peanut paste and a trip to the emergency room that left my parents with a crystal clear message. Keep her away from peanuts, and a whole host of other foods if you want her to grow up. It's not just peanuts, though. Soy, peas, cherries, almonds, tomatoes, apricots, bananas, and even potatoes are all off limits. It's a list that makes waiters raise an eyebrow and friends hesitate to invite me over for dinner. It's also a list that my mother-in-law Jane knows by heart, yet she somehow manages to question every single time we're over for dinner. "Are you sure you can't even have a little bit of this pie? It's got almond extract," she'd ask, with a tone that hovered between concern and disbelief. I would smile politely, though I'd rather not, and say, "Yeah, I'm sure. Thanks, though." It was the same dance every time. I remember once at a family gathering, I was navigating the buffet, a mental checklist running through my head. Alex was by my side, plate in hand, trying to help me find something safe to eat. That's when Jane swooped in, her voice sickly sweet. "Liz, you must try this casserole. I made sure it was Liz-friendly," she announced. But the glint in her eye didn't match her nurturing words. Alex paused, his fork mid-air. "Mom, you used cream of mushroom soup in this, right?" he asked, knowing full well that many brands included soy. A big no-no for me. Jane's smile faltered for a second. "Oh, I think so. It should be fine." But it wasn't fine, and we both knew it. We made our excuses, me leaving the casserole untouched, but the incident stuck with me. It was a small victory in what felt like an ongoing battle, a battle where Jane held all the cards because she controlled the kitchen. I've learned to navigate this world with careful steps. Eating out is a strategic operation. Alex and I were at our favorite Italian place, a rare find that understood the gravity of food allergies. I'd recited my usual spiel to the waiter, who nodded understandingly. Alex watched me with those soft eyes of his, the ones that said he'd do anything to make my life easier. "You okay?" he asked after the waiter left. "Yeah, I'm fine. I just hate making a fuss," I replied, folding my napkin on my lap. You're not making a fuss, you're making sure you don't, die, he said, half joking, half serious. I laughed, a short, grateful sound. Well, when you put it that way. After dinner, as we walked under the clear night sky, I felt light, happy. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from Jane. Her words were like a cloud over the moon, darkening the moment. Be careful, Liz. Not everyone takes your condition seriously. Wouldn't want anything to happen to you. I read the text to Alex, who wrapped an arm around me, pulling me close. She's just trying to get to you, he said. But as much as I wanted to shrug it off, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jane's message was more than just a jab. It was a warning, a reminder that my allergy made me vulnerable, not just to food, but to people like her who saw it as a weakness to be exploited. The rest of the walk home, I couldn't help but think about all the close calls, all the accidental exposures, and how easily something could go wrong. It wasn't just the peanuts or the soy or the peas. It was the realization that my allergy was more than a personal battle. It was a chink in my armor that someone like Jane could see as an opportunity. And that thought was scarier than any allergic reaction I'd ever had. Dinners at Jane's house were always a production, like a play where everyone knew their parts except me. I was the wild card, the one who could unintentionally cause a scene with a single bite. Alex tried to make it better, but there's only so much you can do when you're playing in someone else's home court. One particular evening, the tension was as thick as the gravy on the table. Jane was bustling around, placing dish after dish on the table. I sat there, my own plate empty, waiting to figure out what I could eat without a trip to the hospital. Alex, darling, pass the green beans to Liz. They're just divine, Jane said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that didn't reach her eyes. I eyed the beans, but something seemed off. What's in them? I asked. Oh, just a touch of almond slivers for crunch, she said, waving a hand dismissively. I put my hand up, stopping Alex's reach. I can't eat those, remember? Almonds are a no-go for me, Jane, I said. Faint surprise, a hand to her chest. Oh dear, I must have forgotten. Silly me, Jane replied. Alex's chair scraped back as he stood up. Mom, this is serious. Liz could end up in the hospital. His voice was firm-edged with a frustration that made Jane's eyes narrow just a little. I just wanted to make something nice, she said. It's not my fault Liz has all these allergies. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. The other relatives glanced around. Forks paused mid-air, not sure where to look. I felt a flush creeping up my neck, embarrassed by the spotlight. Alex's dad, Mark, tried to break the tension. Let's just enjoy the meal, shall we? There's plenty Liz can eat. But the damage was done. The rest of the dinner passed in strained politeness, with Jane asking pointed questions about my allergies as if she were taking notes for next time. Later, when Alex and I were alone, he apologized. I'm sorry, Liz. I should have double-checked everything before we came, he said. I shook my head, tired of feeling like a problem to be managed. It's not your fault, but I'm starting to think your mom does these things on purpose, I said. He didn't answer, and he didn't need to. We both knew the truth. Jane was serving up a bite of malice with every meal, and I was the main course. I could always tell when Jane had been working on Alex. He'd get this distant look in his eyes, like he was seeing me but also seeing through me, weighing her words against his own judgment. This particular evening, it was like a cloud had settled over him. Mom thinks we should consider... Well, she thinks we might not be thinking about the future enough, Alex muttered, not meeting my eye as he fumbled with the TV remote. The future? I asked, a sinking feeling in my gut. Yeah, kids and your health issues, he continued, the word issues hanging awkwardly in the air between us. Issues, I repeated, feeling a tightness in my chest. She talked to you about my allergies again, didn't she? He sighed, setting the remote down. She's just worried, Liz. She thinks it's a lot for us to handle, especially if we want a family. We've talked about this. I've managed so far, haven't I? And there are plenty of people with allergies who have kids, I said, bristling. I know. It's just, she has this way of making me doubt things, he admitted. The room was quiet for a moment, the tension thick. I watched him, this man I loved, wrestling with the seeds of doubt his mother had planted. Alex, do you doubt us? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. No, he looked up finnily, his eyes clear and firm. I don't. I just hate that she keeps bringing it up. I hate that it makes us fight. I reached for his hand, our fingers intertwining. We're not fighting. We're on the same side, remember? He nodded, pulling me into a hug. You and me against the world, right? Right, I said. But as I held him, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jane's words were like weeds threatening to grow wild and choke the life out of the beautiful thing we had. And I knew then that it wasn't just my allergies that needed managing. It was the doubts that could seep into the cracks of even the strongest relationships. The news of my pregnancy came as a surprise, a happy one for Alex and me, a complicated one for everyone else. The day we announced it to his parents, Jane's reaction was like watching a robot trying to mimic human emotions. A pause, then a smile that didn't quite match the situation. We're going to have a baby, Mom, Alex said, his voice a mix of pride and caution as he gauged his mother's reaction. That's wonderful, Jane managed to say, the words sounding foreign in her mouth. We must have a family dinner to celebrate. I was skeptical. Celebrations at Jane's were never just celebrations, but I saw the hopeful look in Alex's eyes and agreed. The night of the dinner, the house was buzzing with relatives. Jane was the perfect hostess, floating from guest to guest with a grace that felt almost genuine. When she reached us, her smile was practiced. Congratulations, Liz, she said. This is such a joyous occasion. Thank you, Jane, I replied, trying to match her formality. We're excited. Alex wrapped his arm around my waist, a silent thank you for playing along. As dinner approached, I felt the familiar anxiety. A table full of food was a minefield for me, but tonight I hoped would be different. The table was a feast, dishes upon dishes laid out, and I felt every eye on me as I hesitated, my hand hovering over the options. Go on, dear, Jane urged. Eat up. You're eating for two now. I smiled weakly, choosing the safest options, vegetables and rice, plain and simple. But as I reached for a slice of bread, Jane stopped me. Actually, maybe not that one, she said quickly. I'm not sure if the baker used soy flour. I paused, bread in hand, and met her gaze. There was a flicker of something there. Concern, or was it a challenge? Thank you for letting me know, I said, putting the bread down. But the warning bells were already ringing in my head. How did she know about the soy flour? It seemed too close a call, too perfect a save. The rest of the meal passed in a blur, congratulations mingling with the clinking of glasses. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Jane's hospitality was a veneer, and beneath it lay a trap set, and waiting for just the right moment. The family dinner in honor of our future baby was nothing short of a banquet. Jane had outdone herself, and there was a spread that would make a Thanksgiving dinner look modest. But my stomach was in knots, not from hunger, but from fear. Every dish was a potential hazard, a hidden enemy that could send me to the hospital or worse. As we all took our seats, the chatter around the table was lively, filled with the usual family gossip and stories. Jane was at the head of the table, presiding over the feast like a queen in her court. She called everyone to attention with a gentle tap of her glass. Before we begin, she said, her voice steady and clear, I just want to say how thrilled we are to be celebrating Liz and Alex's upcoming addition to our family. There was a round of hearty hear, hear, and applause. I forced a smile, feeling Alex squeeze my hand under the table. Thank you, everyone, I said. We're really looking forward to this new chapter in our lives. The meal began, and I tentatively picked at my food, choosing the simplest items. Alex watched me, his brow furrowed with concern. "You doing okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah, just being careful," I replied, pushing a roasted potato around my plate. Jane's eyes were on me, and I felt like a specimen under a microscope. "Liz, you haven't touched your salad," she said, her voice tinged with forced cheerfulness. "The dressing is on the side, just as you like it." "Thank you, Jane," I said. "I'm just not much of an appetite tonight." I avoided the salad that I knew could easily contain hidden allergens. As the dinner wore on, the tension grew. Every time Jane offered me something, my anxiety spiked. The room felt hot, the walls inching closer with each passing minute. Then came the cake. It was a beautiful confection, layers of sponge and cream that made the room ooh and ah. Jane cut a slice and handed it to me with a smile that might have been genuine if I had never known better for the mom-to-be, she said. I looked at the cake, then at Alex, then at Jane. "I really shouldn't," I said, "but it looks delicious." "Oh, come on, Liz. One little bite won't hurt for the baby," Jane pressed, her voice sweet as the icing. That's when Alex's dad, Mark, stepped in. His hand swift as he knocked the plate from my hands, the cake tumbled to the floor, and a stunned silence fell over the room. "What the hell, Dad?" Alex exclaimed, his voice a mix of anger and confusion. Mark stood, his face pale but his voice firm. "I saw the label in the trash. That cake has peanut oil in it." The room erupted in chaos. Jane's face was the picture of shock, but her eyes gave her away. There was a flash of something there, fear maybe, guilt. Alex stood, his chair clattering behind him. "Mom, did you know about this?" he demanded. Jane's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. And in that moment, the truth was as clear as the danger that had been on my plate. The room was dead silent after Mark's revelation, the dropped cake like a crime scene on the hardwood floor. Everyone's eyes were locked on Jane, who seemed to shrink under the collective gaze. "Mom, is it true? Did you know?" Alex's voice cut through the tension, sharp and demanding. Jane's eyes flickered with something dark before she regained her composure. "Of course not. I would never." Her voice trailed off, unconvincing. Mark wasn't having any of it. "I saw the shopping list, Jane. Peanut oil for cake. It was right there in your handwriting," he said, his voice steady but laced with disappointment. The murmurs around the table grew louder, a mix of disbelief and anger bubbling up from the family. Alex was shaking his head, his hands balled into fists. "How could you, Mom? Liz could have died," he said. I was frozen in my seat, the gravity of the situation anchoring me down. This wasn't just carelessness or forgetfulness. It was intentional. Jane's mask finally slipped, her face twisted in anger. "I didn't want it to come to this, but she's not right for you, Alex. She's weak, and now she's bringing a child into this world who will be just like her." Alex took a step toward his mother, incredulous. "Weak? Liz is the strongest person I know, and you— How could you be so cruel?" I could feel the eyes on me, waiting for me to break down, to crumble under the weight of Jane's words. But I didn't. "Jane," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, "you've made your feelings very clear. But this is not just about me. This is about a family, your grandchild." Jane looked away. Her jaw clenched, and for the first time, I saw the hint of fear in her eyes. Maybe she realized that her actions hadn't just endangered me, but her relationship with her son, her reputation, everything. The rest of the evening was a blur. There were arguments, tears, and hushed conversations, as the family tried to process what had happened. Alex and I left early, the weight of the evening heavy on our shoulders. We didn't speak much on the drive home. What was there to say? The truth was out, and with it, the facade of a polite, if not happy family was shattered. The drive home was quiet, the kind of silence that's heavy, filled with things unsaid. When we finally walked through our front door, Alex and I just stood there, the echo of the night's drama still ringing in our ears. Alex was the first to break the silence. "I can't believe my own mother would do something like that," he said, his voice hollow. I sat down on the couch, the cushion failing to comfort me. "I know it's a lot to take in." He sat beside me, taking my hands in his. "I'm so sorry, Liz. It's unforgivable." "It's not your fault, Alex. We couldn't have known she'd go this far," I said, trying to reassure him. But the truth was there, hanging between us. Jane had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The family was in pieces. Some stood by us, shocked and appalled by Jane's actions, while others struggled to wrap their heads around the reality of the situation. The next few days were a whirlwind. Alex's phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls. Relatives wanted to express their shock, their support, their apologies. And through it all, there was a deafening silence from Jane. No apologies, no explanations, nothing. Alex finally broke the news to me a week later. "Dad's left her. He can't get past what she did," he said, his voice heavy with sadness. He said it's been a long time coming. I wasn't sure how to feel: relief, sadness, pity, and Jane. I asked tentatively, "How is she?" "She's not handling it well. She's alone now," Alex replied, a twinge of something like regret in his tone. We sat in our living room, the walls we'd painted together, the furniture we'd picked out during countless trips to the store. It was our home, filled with our memories, our love. And outside, there was a storm brewing, one that threatened to uproot everything we knew. But in that moment, I realized that no matter what happened, we had each other. We were a team about to bring a new life into the world, and that was what mattered. "I love you, Liz," Alex said, pulling me close. "I love you too," I whispered back. The fallout from that night would linger. The scars it left on our family would take time to heal. But as I looked at Alex, at the life we'd built, and the future we were about to embark on, I knew that we'd weather any storm together. And as for Jane, she was a chapter in our lives that we had closed, a story that we wouldn't let define us. From now on, it was just us, our baby, and the road ahead. Whatever it brought, we'd face it together.
I go by the name Ruby, a 26-year-old single woman without a full-time job. Since my middle school years, I've tended to keep to myself quite a bit. I went to high school, but I dropped out, so I only have a middle school education. Since then, I've been living with my parents, working part-time jobs, and taking on work from online postings. I have an older brother named James, who's 3 years older than me, and he's the complete opposite of me. Good at sports, lots of friends, and the so-called outgoing type. My brother didn't want people to know he had a sister like me. He never brought friends home, and even if I happened to run into him and his friends at the convenience store, he'd ignore me. I thought it couldn't be helped and considered it like someone else's problem. Once my brother started college and moved out to live on his own, I stopped worrying about such things. Then there was talk of my brother getting married. He would be turning 29. It wasn't surprising. Later, it was decided that my brother would bring his fiancée to our parents' house. Since I was home that day, I decided to join them. "Dad, Mom, I'm home," I announced as my brother arrived on time. When he saw me sitting with our parents, he looked confused for a moment. "Sorry to intrude." His fiancée entered the house, seemingly unaware of my brother's attitude. Then looking at me, she said, "Hi," and looked puzzled. I could tell from her eyes that she was asking my brother, "Who is this?" He probably hadn't told her about me. "Thank you for coming all this way. I'm James's mother, this is his father." My mother introduced only herself and my father. The fiancé seemed satisfied and bowed politely, but still looked puzzled. My father didn't follow up on my behalf. My parents have always been harsh with me, who couldn't live up to my accomplished brother. When we were young, they'd say things like, Your brother can do it, why can't you? As if it was part of our education. But it changed as we grew older. Eventually, I was even called a money-sucking leech. It seemed that my parents were planning to ignore me at this meeting too. I'll go and get some more drinks. As my mother stood up to leave, she whispered in my ear. Why are you here? Go back to your room. I had attended this meeting because I wanted to get along with my family in my own way, but it seemed to have backfired. Still, I couldn't just leave, so I stayed put. My brother's fiancée introduced herself as Emma. She was the same age as me, 26, but a beautiful woman with a refined atmosphere, giving off a vibe that I shouldn't casually talk to her. My brother seemed a bit annoyed. He probably didn't like me being there. He introduced the woman to our father and mother, but he didn't talk to me at all. It felt like a ghost. When the conversation about the marriage was over, casual chatter naturally started, but my brother still acted like I didn't exist. Then James asked, what do you usually do, Ruby? Before I could answer, my brother interrupted. Wait, Emma, you don't need to talk to her. That's what he said clearly. Emma looked a bit surprised. That's right, don't worry about it, my mother chimed in. Yeah, don't worry about it, she's just a stranger with a blood relation. When my father said that, something inside me ended. A stranger, huh? I thought so. Reconciliation was impossible from the start. That's how the meeting ended, as if it didn't matter whether I was there or not. Soon after, my brother and Emma got married and started building a house to live in together. My brother works at a famous company after graduating from college. He's still in his 20s, but his income seems good. Emma is going to be a stay-at-home wife and has already quit her job. Around the time my brother's house was completed, we received an invitation to a housewarming party. It would be held with a limited number of guests, including Emma's relatives and my brother's bosses. My mother was anxious, saying, "Oh, it's already finished, time flies, we need to prepare a housewarming gift. What should we get?" My father said, "We're family, so it doesn't have to be anything fancy." And he casually turned over the invitation. Only my father and mother's names were on the invitation. My name wasn't there. My mother seemed to have noticed but asked, "Ruby is coming too, right?" I wondered what she meant. At the meeting they had introduced me in such a horrible way. "It's fine if I'm not invited," I declined, but my mother insisted. "No, you're coming, I'll make arrangements." So, I ended up going to the party. On the day of the party, it suddenly started raining. My parents and I took a taxi to my brother's house. My brother and his wife didn't come out to the front yard because of the rain, and welcomed their guests at the entrance. As soon as we arrived at my brother's house, my mother said to me, "You pay for the taxi," and got out of the car with my father first, without umbrellas. They both hurried toward the entrance, so that's why I thought there was quite a distance between my brother's house and ours. I thought it was extravagant to take a taxi. I was the one called to pay for the car. After I paid, I ran towards the entrance, and Emma asked me, "Who are you?" I had only met Emma once before. Maybe she forgot me, I thought so, and introduced myself. "I'm Ruby, James's sister," but she said with a smile. "Ah, the high school dropout, neat. We didn't invite the parasite living off a parent." Emma said this casually with a smile. My brother, who had just returned from showing someone in, came out too. He said to me with disdain, "Huh, why are you here?" "Hey James, I told you not to invite her, why is she here?" "Well, I don't know either. My brother didn't want to invite me after all, and Emma changed her attitude once she knew about me. Actually, she's worse than my brother and parents. Would it have been better if I didn't come?" I asked my brother cautiously. Yeah, you're a stranger because of your low education. Actually, not finishing high school doesn't even count as an education, right? Could you please leave the property quickly? Emma followed up on what my brother said, like she was siding with him. Her expression remained calm the whole time, which was truly terrifying. Understood, I turned on my heel. The taxi from earlier was gone, and since we weren't on a main street, it seemed difficult to find another one. I didn't have an umbrella. I trudged along, getting drenched in the rain. I could hear Emma's laughter from behind. After a while, I returned home. My parents came back, looking like they had a good time. They saw my face and asked, "Why did you leave suddenly? Couldn't even call a taxi for the way back? You're so useless," my mother complained, as if it were a matter of course. "Sorry, I suddenly had a stomach ache," I lied to cover it up. "For such a reason, you left on your own. You're hopeless. Make sure to give the gift later, you're an adult," my father told me. Speaking of which, I had prepared something to give at the party, but I brought it back without giving it. I wanted to send it by mail, but I didn't know the address. I could ask my parents, but the atmosphere was awkward. So I decided to contact my brother. "I want to send a gift. Can you tell me the address?" This was the only reply from my brother. "I don't give my address to strangers, right?" I let out a sigh. Is it really fun to start dominance over me in private? Not just embarrassing to introduce to others, I couldn't help but be amazed. It might not be just my brother who's sending these messages. Maybe Emma is also typing and laughing out loud. Either way, it's ridiculous. I gave up on sending a congratulatory gift with the meaning of my brother and his wife in their housewarming party. I decided to leave home. I realized I couldn't get along with my family anymore and decided to live on my own. I didn't have a full-time job, but I had some savings from my part-time work. I was able to rent a room for living alone. Since it wasn't much to live on, I decided to try streaming videos in my spare time. I was already interested in watching streams as a hobby and was good at finding trends among popular streamers and ways to increase views. When I started doing it myself, I made tens of thousands a month. The amount grew, covering my living expenses. I decided to invest the money I wasn't using. The investments went well, and I decided to try running a small company importing and selling goods. I was busy in a good way and fulfilled every day. I didn't have a family that would complain about me using the computer all the time. A few months later, I received a call from my parents who hadn't contacted me since I left home. "We want you to help James financially," they said. "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious. I wondered what could have happened to the person who just built a new house. My parents slowly began to explain the situation. My brother apparently held frequent parties after building his new house, interacting with various people such as bosses, executives, clients, and Emma's acquaintances. Among them, someone proposed an investment opportunity, and my brother ended up trusting the proposal. He wasted a large sum of money, lured by the promise of making big returns in just a few months. I was amazed. My brother had a decent job, so if he had just kept working hard, he wouldn't have made such a mistake. "Who is the person who recommended the investment? Isn't it a scam?" I asked. "No, it's not. It's one of Emma's acquaintances." My parents seemed to completely trust Emma. "How much do you need?" She was shocked when I asked. It was an amount that a company employee couldn't easily pay. "Is that really the amount my brother needs as a loan?" I asked my parents hesitantly, and as expected, they gave me the answer I feared. We were also introduced to the same investment. My parents hesitated before responding. "I can't come up with that much money so easily." "Sorry," I tried to hang up the phone, but they clung on, saying, "We're your real family. Help us out in times like these, real family." Too little, too late. Sorry, but I'm busy and I'm a stranger to you, right? With that, I hung up the phone. Later on, somehow they found out, and my parents' and brothers' families showed up. The location was the office of the company I run. I was in a business meeting at the time. My secretary informed me, "There are guests here for you, President." I don't have any other appointments. Who are they? I shuddered. I apologized to the business partner I was meeting with and excused myself for a moment. When I went to the reception area, there stood my pregnant sister-in-law, Emma, my brother and my parents. "You're running a company, huh?" "Well, it's much smaller than where I work." My brother smirked and looked around the office. "Who are you?" I asked, pretending I didn't know them. "What's with the attitude?" my brother shouted, losing his temper. My mother intervened and explained. "We talked about this before, but we need your support. You're running a company, so you can help us out, right?" My mother shamelessly asked for money as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "Yeah, it's an important time for our family. Emma is about to give birth, the child's growth isn't good, so we need to see a good doctor." "Please, Ruby," my father and Emma chimed in, acting as if it was my duty to pay off everyone's debts. Employees occasionally walked by the reception area, glancing over with concern. Wanting to get rid of them as quickly as possible, I said, "Please leave. You're causing a disturbance." My brother exploded with anger again. "What? We're a disturbance? We came all the way here, and that's how you talk to your family," he yelled. The employees passing by stopped in their tracks, facing them. My brother started to make a scene. "Do you all know this girl dropped out of middle school? She was a shut-in, no NEET." He seemed intent on humiliating me. If I didn't give him the money, however, the employees responded with words my brother didn't expect. "We know everyone knows the president's background, me too. The president hires many people from similar situations. Is there a problem?" My brother, who usually socializes only with highly educated and high-income people, seemed caught off guard and stammered, Instead my father said, "What a pathetic company, just a gathering of needs." My brother chimed in, "Exactly, companies that do business with a place like this can't be any good either." He yelled loudly. At that moment, the president of the company I was meeting with, who had been waiting in the reception room, came out. He must have heard the shouting. My brother's face went blank and then turned pale as he looked at the man. He lowered his gaze. "What's wrong, James?" Emma asked. My brother whispered to Emma, "Idiot, don't say my name." But it was too late. James, oh, it's you." The company president walked straight up to my brother and looked at his face. "You're the guy who always falls, Mr. Long. The division manager, right? We owe a lot to your company." His company was also a client of my brother's company. My brother was sweating profusely from every pore on his face. I guess I'm not memorable since we're not a DN company," my brother mumbled. When the president threw my brother's words back at him, my brother went, "Oh," and froze up. My father, mother and Emma also sensed the trouble and fell silent. I apologized to the president again. Ignoring them, "I'm sorry for taking up your valuable time. I'll ask them to leave." "Are you sure?" "I have time today, so I don't mind waiting. You can prioritize talking with your family." "No, they're not my family." I glanced at my parents' and brother's family as I said this. "They're complete strangers." After that, my parents' and brother's family were kicked out of the company. Maybe they were stunned by the exchange with the company president, but they left quietly. As for how my job was exposed, I was curious, so I looked into it and found out that Emma was the cause. She had a friend who was well informed about investment-related information and always had her antenna up. There was a young woman in her 20s who was making a name for herself as a talented trader and company owner. Emma was surprised when she saw a photo in the media and realized that this woman was her husband's sister, who she had heard was a middle school dropout and a MEET. Emma told my brother and parents about this and suggested they ask me for money. Since I was busy during the day and didn't answer the phone and I didn't call them back after they asked me for money, they came to my company. I had been treating them like complete strangers, so I decided not to get involved with them anymore. But I couldn't help but look into Emma. I was curious about her friend being involved in my parents' and brother's financial failures. That friend was Emma's ex-boyfriend. In fact, they seemed to still be involved. By the way, the child in Emma's womb wasn't my brother's, but the child of that investor. No way, my brother was devastated. It's natural to be upset since everything had been a lie. Furthermore, it seems she had been extracting money from several other men under the guidance of her ex-boyfriend. Of course, my brother and Emma ended up getting a divorce. Emma is now under police custody along with her ex-boyfriend. However, the lost money won't be returned anytime soon. Ever since the incident at my company, my brother's position at his workplace worsened. In his 20s, he was transferred to a so-called Windows side department and eventually resigned. He couldn't work there for long and eventually resigned. Possibly irritated by the financial failure and trouble surrounding my brother, my father got into trouble when the president witnessed him losing his temper with a subcontractor at work. After investigating his work attitude, he was fired. Apparently he had been saying things like, "Junior high or high school graduates are worthless," and, "If you didn't graduate from a certain university or higher, you're not a real person," similar to what he used to say to me. So both my brother and father ended up losing their jobs. The family, or rather former family, whose income decreased, still contacts me, saying, "Let's live together." By the way, I had them banned from entering my company's building, so they can't force their way in anymore. With everything that happened, we're still family, right? The unemployed trio tries various tactics to cling to me, but my answer is always the same. I don't know you, you're complete strangers to me. I have no intention of giving any other response in the future.
My name is Aria, and I have come here with my story. To be honest, all the toxic mother-in-law stories I have heard have inspired me to share my personal experience. I never knew mother-in-laws could be so horrible. I lost my mom in my childhood, and my father also passed away before I met my husband Daniel. They were amazing parents, so I never realized that mothers can be so cruel. I should have seen this coming. My mother-in-law, Bonnie, was a horrible mother. I have no idea why a part of me was hoping that she would change. I mean, the woman never liked me at all. She was downright mean towards me. Bonnie is one of those people who likes to take advantage of others. Daniel had told me several stories about how she would constantly take his money when he was a minor. Kelly, his sister, also had the same fate. When I finally met Bonnie, I realized that she even expected me to cater to her needs. She said, "I have a certain lifestyle, Haria. I hope you understand that I like to be pampered and spoiled whenever possible. As my future daughter-in-law, you should understand that." "I do understand that, Bonnie, but what I don't understand is why you're telling me this," I replied. "Well, as you know, Daniel takes care of all of my needs. He spoils me with stuff all the time. When you get married to him, I would expect you to contribute as well," she said. That was a total shocker for me. Yes, she did get gifts from Daniel from time to time, but I knew for a fact that all of her gifts and luxurious purchases were conned out of him. Well before I met Bonnie, Daniel and Kelly did tell me about the practices of Bonnie. They said, "Since Daniel wants you to be a part of our family, I think there are a few things you should know about Mom. I don't know how to put this, but she does have a habit of conning us out of money. Seriously, she scams her children out of money. I asked incredulously. Yeah, unfortunately, it's true. Do you remember how I was short on rent last month? Well, Mom took my credit card and bought herself a $1,000 purse, Kelly said. I had no idea about this. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. Sorry, Aria. It was embarrassing for me. My mom acted like an immature child. I didn't know how to tell you the truth, Kelly responded. I was absolutely shocked at Bonnie's audacity. I still had no idea why she thought she was entitled to give herself a gift by spamming her son. Also, I had no idea why Daniel didn't confront her about this illegal activity. Why didn't you confront her? She should have returned the purse and given you the money, I said to Daniel. I did confront her. As usual, she turned on the waterworks and started to emotionally blackmail me. Mom is like that, Aria. You know, it's easy for you to say that Daniel should stand up to her, but in the end, she is our mom. Plus, she can play the victim card very well, Daniel explained. Mom does tend to play the victim. She has raised us as a single mom for a long time. Mom likes to use that against us to get her way, Kelly added. But this is wrong, Daniel. Even if she did sacrifice for you, you guys are helping her enough. She shouldn't be doing this stuff, I said, frustrated. Even when I said it, I knew that there was nothing Daniel could do. Bonnie's excuse for scamming her kids was kind of sentimental, so even I felt bad for her. This is one of the main reasons why I didn't push the issue. At the end of the day, it was their money and their mom. I had no right to say anything else. Daniel and I eventually got married. There had been some more financial problems with Bonnie, but Daniel dealt with it himself. However, I had no idea how low Bonnie could stoop. It all started when Bonnie suddenly decided to live with Kelly. Initially, Kelly was reluctant to house her since she had just had her second child. However, Bonnie guilt-tripped her with her sob stories, saying that she felt lonely. Kelly felt guilty again and allowed her into her home. However, after a few months, Bonnie showed up at our door with her luggage. I said, "Hey Bonnie, what is the matter? I thought you were staying with Kelly." "Yes, but she has just had a second kid, and I don't want her to feel burdened. I thought since this is my son's place, I could stay here for a while. I will look for a place to rent soon. I won't be here for long," Bonnie replied. "You can stay here, Mom. It's not a big deal. We can just adjust for the time being." "Aria, will you have a problem with that? I mean, I know I deserve to be here, but you might not be too happy about it. You might feel as if I'm taking too much from Daniel." "I don't have a problem, Bonnie. I understand why you want to give Kelly some space. She has had a hard pregnancy and needs some time alone with her new family. You can stay here until you get a new place." Honestly, I was a little concerned about Bonnie showing up at our place unannounced, but I kept my mouth shut. I didn't want to disturb Kelly with questions when she was adjusting to her new life. I did put it on the back burner and eventually forgot about it. What did continue to bother me was that Bonnie never left. No, she kept staying with us for months with no intention of looking for a new place. We had no idea why she was doing this. What's worse was the fact that she demanded that Daniel and I fund her shopping sprees. When we refused, she tried to guilt-trip us as well. Suffice to say, I shut that down real quick. While we were still figuring out why Bonnie was making no move to leave, something else happened. A lot of money went missing from our house. It didn't happen at once. We used to find that around $100 to $200 went missing every week. Not only that, but some of my heirloom jewelry also went missing. I was devastated. I said, I don't know where my jewelry went. They were super sentimental to me. My Nana gifted me those before she died. Hell, even one of my mom's rings is missing. I don't know what to do. Don't worry, Aria. It'll show up somewhere. It can't just disappear from the house, Daniel said, trying to reassure me. I'm going mad thinking that I have misplaced them. I'll never forgive myself if they are lost forever, Daniel. Do you think we should inform the police? Don't be such a whiny woman, Aria. They are just jewelry. You still have plenty more. I knew a girl like you wouldn't be able to handle such precious pieces. This serves you right. Don't bother the police with such stupid stuff, Bonnie snapped. Bonnie's reaction raised a lot of alarm bells in my head immediately. I smelt something fishy. However, being the good girl I am, I dismissed those suspicions quickly. In my mind, Bonnie didn't deserve my suspicions just because she was mean to me. When the money still kept disappearing, Daniel and I grew concerned. We had plenty of fights about this issue as well. Mostly, we blamed each other for misplacing the money. Bonnie's laid-back attitude about being in our home was also getting on my nerves. She was living with us rent-free and gave us absolutely no money at all. Instead, she came home with bags of luxury products almost every month. It was so bizarre that even Daniel was getting tired of her. One day, we actually decided to talk to Bonnie. We said, Mom, is everything all right? You said that you were going to find a rental apartment. Do you have any leads on that? It's been months since you moved in. No, I haven't decided on one yet. It'll just take a few more days to find one. You know I have some financial problems and can't just find a place right away, Bonnie replied. But you have been spending a lot of money on luxury goods every month. You have money to pay for those, but not for rent. I find that odd. I mean, you don't even contribute to the household, I said. Don't talk to me like that, Aria. You have no right to tell me how to spend my money. Why should I contribute to this house? I'm only here for a few days. Plus, I am Daniel's mother. I deserve to enjoy my son's house and everything in it. Bonnie snapped back. Having conversations with Bonnie took us nowhere. She apparently had enough to spend on unnecessary stuff, but didn't have rent money. We had no idea why she was doing this and intentionally extended her stay. Also, her comment about deserving everything in the house alarmed me. All these events made me suspect that Bonnie was stealing from us. I was afraid to talk to Daniel about this. I knew he would get mad and defensive. However, I gathered the courage to breach the subject. I sat him down in private and said, I don't know how to say this, Daniel. I have a feeling Bonnie has been going through our stuff. She might even be the one stealing from us. What are you saying, Harry? I don't believe this. You are dead wrong about all this. Think about it, Daniel. All this trouble with missing money and jewelry started after Bonnie moved in. We both leave for work every day, and she is the only one who stays here. Plus, it's easy for her to access our stuff since she stays here all alone all day. My mom would never do something like that. She may not be able to rent right now, but that doesn't mean she doesn't have money. Even if she didn't, she would never steal. You're pretty confident about her, Daniel. I understand she is your mom, but you need to be practical about this. I'm telling you that I'm very suspicious about her right now. My suspicions were getting intense when more money kept disappearing throughout the months. I still had no idea where my jewelry went, so I decided to do something weird. I went out and got cameras for our rooms. I was desperately hoping to find answers to where my stuff was. I hoped it would give me an answer about why Bonnie was still staying with us and if she was behind this. Daniel knew about my decision and thought nothing of it. After a few days, money went missing again, so Daniel and I decided to check the footage. We froze when we saw the clips. Turns out Bonnie was stealing money from us when we were not looking. That explained all the strange money disappearances we had over the months. At first, we used to blame each other for misplacing the money, but now it was clear that Bonnie was stealing from us. Hell, she was the one who stole my heirloom jewelry. This is exactly why she never talked about leaving. I mean, who would leave a place that gives you free coins? After seeing the footage, Daniel was furious. He wanted to confront Bonnie right away and demand she give the money back. He said, "I had no idea Mom would steal from us. Sorry, Aria. I shouldn't have blamed you for the stolen money. I should have taken your suspicions into account when you told me about Mom." It's okay, Daniel. She is your mom. It's natural for you to feel for her. But she tricked us both. What she did is not okay. We let her stay here for free, and she repays us by stealing our stuff. I feel so bad, Aria. She even stole your jewelry. Just wait, I'll go and confront her. I will make her give everything back. Daniel, we can't confront Bonnie. She will deny everything and just blackmail us. I highly doubt she'll return the money, plus she may have already sold my jewelry. Then what do we do, Aria? We can't just stay quiet. I don't want Mom to walk away without consequences. Don't worry, Daniel. Your mom will face consequences. I won't let her go easily. But first, there are two things we need to do. Rushing to confront Bonnie was not the best idea for us. I also knew that the best course of action would be to call the police. However, I wanted to talk to Kelly to make sure she wouldn't help Bonnie. From all my interactions with Kelly, I was almost sure that she wouldn't support Bonnie. Still, I thought that a family discussion was in order. So I called Kelly and told her that we would come over. When we showed up and told her everything, Kelly was shocked. She said, "Oh my God. Mom did this to you guys too. What the hell is wrong with her?" "What do you mean, Kelly?" "Mom has stolen from us before. When my husband and I let her stay here, she stole $7,000 from us. I did confront her about it, and she confessed. That's horrible. Why didn't you press charges against her, Kelly? That is a lot of money." "We didn't have proof, guys. She knew that and mocked me for trying to scare her. In the end, we had to let it go because she didn't leave any evidence. But we do have evidence, Kelly. We saw the CCTV camera footage. She's the one who has been stealing from us. I can't believe she dared to touch our money and Aria's jewelry. She has been crying for weeks and blaming herself." "Really? You guys have proof. That is actually amazing. I bet Mom never saw that coming. Are you guys planning to go to the cops?" "Daniel is right, Kelly. We do have proof, and I'm going to sue her and call the police. She has crossed a major line and committed a crime. I don't think we should let her go. What do you say, Kelly?" "I am all on your side, Aria. Hell, I would have pressed charges myself if I had proof. Even if I couldn't do anything, I'm glad you can. Don't let her get off easy, and don't worry. I won't come to rescue her when she needs bail money." With that confirmation in hand, Daniel and I went home. On our way home, we called the police and told them everything. We even saved all the evidence that we had so far. What's even better was the fact that I was watching her live through the cameras. Yes, this witch stole money again while we were coming back from Kelly's place. She stole the whole thing from my car. When Daniel and I reached home, Bonnie was already in the kitchen, pretending to be concerned about dinner. I knew that she had no intention of helping. She was just pretending to help. We calmly went into the kitchen and told her that we needed to talk. She looked confused and asked us what was wrong. We said, "Bonnie, we know that you've been stealing from us. We want to know why, and we want all our money plus jewelry back." What are you talking about? I have no idea about your money or anything. There must be a misunderstanding. Quit the act, Bonnie. There is no use for that right now. Just answer my question. We are really upset. I need answers right now. Don't deny it because we have proof you have been stealing from us. Daniel, look at what your witch wife is saying. She's accusing your mother of stealing. I just cannot believe her audacity. I always knew Aria hated me, but I never thought she would stoop so low. Say something, Daniel. You can't let her insult me like that. What do you want me to say, Mom? Aria's not lying. We have security cameras in the house. I saw you steal from us. That's when I pulled out my phone and showed her all the recordings we had. She took one look at them and turned pale. The sudden change in her expression was hilarious. I would have laughed if I wasn't pissed and concerned about my heirloom jewelry. Bonnie saw the tapes and started to stutter. She mumbled out excuses just as the police pulled up to the house. She looked panicked and said, "Daniel, just look at that. Your witch of a wife has called the police on me. Look, I know I messed up, but you can't let me get arrested. Your wife planned all this to make me look bad and kick me out. You have some nerve blaming Aria after what you have done. You are a pathetic mom. Nothing Aria did can justify your thieving actions. To even try to pull that is outrageous. We have been more than generous with you, Bonnie. We let you live here rent-free and didn't even charge you utilities. You stayed here for 4 months and repaid our kindness by stealing our money. You knew how sentimental and precious my jewelry was to me, yet you stole them and sold them to God knows where." Bonnie started to cry very loudly and begged us to forgive her. She again gave all sorts of excuses and even tried to be nice to me. It was disgusting, and I felt nothing but anger towards her. I let the police in and showed them the footage of Bonnie's stealing antics. They took verbal statements from me and Daniel and arrested Bonnie. That didn't stop Bonnie from trying to make a fuss about her arrest. Instead, she alternated between begging and crying to screaming and yelling at us. Things calmed down only after she was taken away by the cops. In the weeks that followed, we gave the police all the evidence we had. Since Bonnie was now a legal tenant, we also had to serve her an eviction notice. Bonnie stayed in jail because she had no money to get bail. Her bank account was frozen because she deposited all the stolen money into it. Kelly had promised not to help out Bonnie at all. Instead, she gave her own statement to the police about what happened at her house. Suffice to say, Bonnie was absolutely not happy. The case went to court, and she was found guilty. We still have another hearing where the judge will declare her punishment. The police also made her spill the name of the pawn shop where she sold my jewelry. She gave them the name as she was scared. We went to the shop with all the proof and the police. Thankfully, we were able to get back my jewelry, but it bore bad news for Bonnie. The pawn shop and my insurance company both sued her since she signed a declaration at the pawn shop saying that the jewelry was hers. Bonnie would be apprehended for that as well. It looks like Bonnie will face some jail time after all. As for me and Daniel, we're doing much better. I am expecting our first child, and I'm super happy. What makes me even happier is the fact that Daniel no longer wants to keep in touch with Bonnie. It gives me some relief to know that my kids won't be around a thief. Both Daniel and Kelly have informed Bonnie about the no-contact decision. Bonnie didn't react well, but has respected it so far. I guess she doesn't want more felony charges against her. So far, we are in a much better place and eagerly waiting for Bonnie to be jailed here. My name's Lauren. Growing up, the difference between me and my twin sister, Hannah, was like night and day. She was the golden girl, and well, I wasn't. Our dad, a Stern University professor, had his life's work tied up in books and lectures, while our mom was the quintessential housewife, dedicated to her home and family. She pushed us to follow in her footsteps. From as early as I can remember, being at home felt more like sitting through a never-ending critique session. My parents had a blueprint for the perfect family, and it didn't include a daughter who wore band t-shirts and liked to keep to herself. "Lauren, why can't you be more like your sister?" was my mom's favorite line, usually tossed my way when I showed up at breakfast with my headphones in, trying to block out the world. Anna, on the other hand, basked in the glow of approval. "I just don't get why it's so hard for you to put on a nice dress and smile more," she'd say, flipping her perfect hair over her shoulder. It was like she was from a different planet. One particularly grueling Saturday, as our family prepared for one of Dad's faculty parties, a total snooze fest, but a mandatory appearance for us, I decided to rebel in the smallest way I knew how. I put on my darkest eyeliner and a pair of boots that definitely did not meet the appropriate standard. "You're not going out like that, are you?" Mom caught me on the stairs, her eyes darting down to my boots, as if they were covered in mud. I shrugged my standard defense. "Don't see why not." She sighed that long, drawn-out kind that said I was the biggest disappointment in her perfectly ordered world. "Please, Lauren, just this once, can't you try to fit in?" "What for?" "So you can pretend we're the perfect family." I shot back, tired of the same old song and dance. "It's not about pretending. It's about showing respect for your father," she argued, her voice taking on that sharp tone meant for business. Anna, overhearing the exchange, came trotting down the hallway, her heels clicking on the hardwood like a judge approaching the bench. "Mom's right, Liz. It's not that hard to look decent." "Why do you always have to make things difficult?" "Maybe I don't want to be a clone of you, Hannah," I snapped, feeling my face get hot. I hated these arguments, hated being compared, but more than anything, I hated feeling like the odd one out in my own home. Dad appeared at the bottom of the stairs, his brow furrowed enough that he commanded attention. His voice was firm. "Lauren, go change now. We're leaving in 10 minutes." His tone left no room for argument. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. The disappointment in his eyes was enough to send me marching back to my room to swap my boots for bland flats and wipe away half my eyeliner. As we drove to the party, the car was silent except for the classical music Dad insisted on playing because it was calming. I stared out the window, the trees blurring past. In that moment, I promised myself someday I'd live a life where no one could tell me what to wear, how to act, or who to be. Someday, I'd be free from the echo of these expectations. My room was the only corner of the house where I could pretend I was somewhere else, anywhere else. Unlike the rest of the house, which was filled with my parents' choices, my room was mine. It wasn't much, just 4 walls covered in sketches and music posters. But it was my escape from the reality of my family's expectations. One evening, as I was trying to lose myself in a playlist of my favorite bands, Dad knocked and marched into my room, his face set in a familiar frown. "Lauren, turn that noise down. And why haven't you studied with Anna today? You know you both have exams coming up," he said, his voice stern. I pulled out one earbud and looked up at him, trying to keep my voice even. "I've been studying, just not with Anna. I learn better on my own." Dad shook his head, clearly not buying it. "You know the rules. Your sister gets good grades, and you should be doing the same. I don't see why you always have to make things difficult." "It's not about making things difficult," I said, my frustration growing. "I just don't see why I have to follow Anna's way of doing everything. Can't I have my own way of studying?" He didn't respond to that, just switched his complaint. "And those friends of yours? I saw you with them at the cafe yesterday. I don't think they're a good influence. You should be spending time with the daughters of my colleagues. They're more suitable. I felt my temper rise. Suitable for what? For you. Because they talk about economics and pretend to enjoy those boring university gatherings. Before he could answer, Mom appeared at the doorway, her voice sharp as she joined in. Lauren, your father is right. Those girls are from good families. They know how to behave. They're the kind of friends you should want. I stood up, facing both of them. What if I don't want friends who are picked for me? What if I want to choose my own friends, choose what I study, or even what I want to be? That's enough, Lauren, Mom said, her tone final. You know your future is with the university. Your father has made sure of that. And after you graduate, you'll need to start thinking about settling down. We've already discussed this. Settling down. The words hung in the air like a life sentence. You mean start thinking about being someone's wife like Anna. Is that all you think I'm meant for? Mom's face softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. We want what's best for you. Following the path we've set out will give you a good life. A good life? I repeated, the irony bitter in my mouth. Is it a good life if it's someone else's idea of good? No one answered that. They didn't need to. We all knew there was no point in arguing. They had their plans and expected me to fall in line, just like Anna. Anna and I were like two sides of the same coin, always together but never on the same page. At university, where Dad taught, the differences between us grew even more obvious. She was into business management, the golden child, always nodding along in lectures, asking smart questions that made professors nod appreciatively. Me, I was stuck in the same program, but it felt like wearing a shoe on the wrong foot. Awkward, uncomfortable, and just plain wrong. One afternoon, as I trudged through a mountain of textbooks in the library, Anna breezed in. Her notes were organized, her smile ready. Hey Liz, you coming to the study group tonight? Professor Hall mentioned he's dropping by. Could be good for us to show face, she said, her tone light but insistent. I glanced up, feeling the weight of her expectations. No, I don't think so. Those things aren't really my scene. She frowned, placing her books down with a thud that matched her disapproval. It's not about it being your scene, Liz. It's about making the right impressions. You need to start taking this seriously. We're graduating soon. I shrugged, turning back to my notes. I am taking it seriously, just not in a way that makes me miserable. Why bother pretending? She asked. Because, Liz, sometimes you have to play the game to get ahead. You think I like all of this? She gestured around at her perfectly tabbed textbooks and color-coded notes. It's not about liking. It's about doing what's necessary. I shook my head, pushing back my chair with a scrape. Well, maybe I'm tired of doing what's necessary according to everyone else. Did you ever think of that? Her voice softened, but her eyes were steel. Liz, I'm just trying to look out for you. Dad's not going to be around to sort things out forever. What are you going to do if you keep alienating everyone? Maybe I'll figure it out on my own. Maybe I don't need to follow Dad's roadmap or yours. I shot back, feeling a surge of defiance. Hannah sighed, her frustration clear. You're so stubborn. Just try, okay. For me, if not for yourself. Show up tonight, talk to Professor Hall. It won't kill you. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not just my annoyingly perfect sister, but someone who actually cared in her own way. Fine, I'll think about it. I conceded, not ready to promise more. Thank you, she said, her smile returning. It's not that bad, you know. You might even like it if you gave it a chance. Doubt it, I muttered, but I knew I'd lost this round. For Anna, I'd show up, sit through another boring discussion, and nod at the right times. It was just a few hours. How bad could it be? As it turned out, not as bad as I thought. Professor Hall was surprisingly interesting when he wasn't lecturing from a podium. I even asked a question, which earned a shocked but pleased look from Anna. Later, as we walked back to our dorm, Anna nudged me. See, not so terrible, right? That fragile piece didn't last long, however. In our last year, Anna introduced us to her fiancé, a lawyer 10 years her senior, already well established, and exactly what our parents dreamed of. Mom and Dad were over the moon, praising Anna for making such a smart match, and immediately turned their expectant eyes on me. Now, Lauren, it's your turn to find someone suitable, Dad said one evening over dinner, his tone implying that my time was running out. Mom nodded enthusiastically, already planning out my life, as if it were another one of her well-organized home projects. Think about your future, dear. Someone who can provide for you, who has a good standing. I remember staring at my plate, feeling the walls close in. Anna's wedding was meticulously planned down to the last detail by Mom, from the bridesmaids' dresses to the floral arrangements, showcasing her perfect vision of family prestige. After the wedding, Mom often visited Anna, dishing out advice and ensuring her life played out just as she had orchestrated. Witnessing this, I knew one thing for certain. I didn't want my life tailored by someone else's hands. One day, I was walking down the street, lost in thoughts of how to escape the life my parents envisioned for me, when I heard the deep rumble of a motorcycle approaching. Curiosity pulled me toward the sound. That's when I saw him, Jake, with his leather jacket and carefree smile, pulling up beside me. "You look like you need a ride," he called over the roar of the engine, a playful twinkle in his eyes. I hesitated, glancing back towards the path home, then at his outstretched hand. What did I have to lose? "Sure, why not?" I replied, my voice a mix of nerves and excitement. Climbing onto the back of his bike, I felt a rush of adrenaline as we sped away. The wind whipped through my hair, and for the first time in a long time, I laughed, genuinely laughed. Jake shouted something about showing me his world, and I held on tighter, not wanting this moment to end. We stopped at a diner frequented by bikers, over burgers and fries. Jake told me about his life as a welder, his passion for bikes, and his love for the open road. It was so different from anything I was used to, raw and real. "Don't you get scared living like this?" I asked, my voice barely above the clatter of plates and chatter around us. Scared? No, it's thrilling. You never know what's around the corner. Isn't that better than having everything planned out for you? He replied, his eyes lighting up with each word. Over the next few weeks, we met secretly. Each ride on Jake's motorcycle pulled me further from the life I was supposed to live and closer to the life I wanted. The speed, the adventure, it wasn't just about the thrill. It was about feeling alive, feeling free. One evening, as we watched the sunset from a secluded overlook, Jake turned to me. "Lauren, I don't just ride to escape. I ride to feel alive, to make every moment count. With you, every moment feels like it's worth something." I leaned into him, my heart beating fast. I've never felt like this before. "You make me feel free, Jake," he smiled, pulling me closer. "Then let's not go back to just existing. Let's live." 6 months with Jake felt like a lifetime of moments I'd always dreamed of. The day he proposed under the stars, with the gentle rumble of his bike in the background, my heart screamed a yes before my mouth could form the word. It was perfect, except for one looming hurdle: my parents. I wrestled with the fear of introducing Jake to them. He was everything they disapproved of: his rough edges, his wild spirit, his simple yet content life as a welder. But love bolstered my courage, and I decided it was time they knew. The day I brought Jake home, he was clad, as usual, in a leather vest, black t-shirt, ripped jeans, and a bandana. I loved that about him. He was unapologetically himself. We walked up the driveway, and I could already feel the weight of my parents' judgment. As we stepped inside, Mom's face went pale at the sight of Jake, her eyes widening in shock. "What in the world, Lauren?" she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. Dad's reaction was harsher, his words sharp as knives. "Who is this, and why is he dressed like a thug in our house?" I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves. "Mom, Dad, this is Jake. He's the man I love. We're getting married." Their silence was deafening. Then Dad turned to Jake, his tone laced with disdain. "Married? What do you do for a living, young man? What are your qualifications?" Jake, bless him, didn't waver. "I'm a welder. I took some specialized courses after high school. I work hard and make an honest living." The look on my parents' faces was a mix of horror and disbelief. Mom looked like she might faint. "A welder? Lauren, you can't be serious." Dad's voice rose, anger flaring. "You expect us to give our blessing to this? To throw away your future for a welder?" I felt my resolve harden. Yes, because he makes me happy. Isn't that what should matter? "But the life you'll lead," Mom started, her voice tremulous. "Will be the life I choose." I shot back, my own voice gaining strength. Dad shook his head, his decision clear. "We cannot and will not support this. If you choose him, don't expect to be a part of this family." The finality in his tone broke my heart, but not my decision. Jake squeezed my hand, giving me the strength to face them. "Then I choose Jake. I choose us. I choose my happiness." Mom's eyes filled with tears, and Dad's jaw clenched tight. "If you walk out with him, don't bother coming back," Dad said, his voice cold. Walking away from my parents' house with Jake, my heart was a mess of emotions. Pain, relief, excitement, and fear, all mixed into one. The night air felt different, like each breath I took was a step further into a new life. We rode in silence for a while, the only sound the steady roar of the motorcycle beneath us. When we finally stopped at a small diner on the outskirts of town, Jake turned to me, his face serious. "You sure about this, Lauren? I mean really sure. There's no going back after tonight," he said, his eyes searching mine for any hint of doubt. I nodded, squeezing his hand tightly. "I've never been more sure of anything. Being with you feels right. It feels like what I'm supposed to do." He smiled that reckless, charming smile that had won me over the first day we met. "All right then, let's do it. Let's start our life together." Inside the diner, we found a quiet booth in the corner. The waitress brought over 2 coffees without asking, and we sat there planning our next steps. "So what's first?" I asked, stirring cream into my coffee, watching it swirl and blend. "We'll need to find a place to stay, at least for a while. Then maybe look for jobs." "I have some buddies who can help us get started," Jake replied, his tone practical but optimistic. "It's going to be tough, isn't it?" I said, more a statement than a question. The reality of what we were doing was beginning to sink in. Jake reached across the table, his hand covering mine. "It might be, but we'll handle it together. Tough is nothing new for either of us, right?" I couldn't help but laugh, a short, sharp burst of genuine amusement. Right, together. We spent hours in that diner talking and planning. Every so often, Jake would throw out an idea that sounded so wild, so free, that it made my heart jump. And maybe one day we'll save enough to take that road trip across the country. Just you, me, and the open road. "I like that," I said, allowing myself to dream bigger than I had ever dared. Riding back into the city, we began our search. The next weeks were a blur of activity. We found a small apartment on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. Jake found work at a local garage, and I picked up shifts at a nearby diner. Life was hard, but it was ours. We made do with what we had, and every night when we came home to each other, it felt like we had everything. Months later, we decided it was time to make it official and got married in a small, intimate ceremony. I held on to a sliver of hope that my family would show up, that they would see how happy I was and let go of their prejudices. But the chairs reserved for them remained empty, and no congratulatory messages came. Despite the sting of their absence, the day was perfect because it was ours. Over time, I grew incredibly close to Jake's mom. She welcomed me with open arms, calling me her daughter, filling in the gaps left by my own family. Her warmth and acceptance healed some of the wounds left by my parents' rejection. Things were finally looking up for Jake and me. After he completed additional diving training and became a certified underwater welder, his income shot up to $150,000 a year. That change made a world of difference. We managed to buy a townhouse in a nice area, the kind of place I'd always dreamed about, but never thought I'd actually live in. I started working as a dispatcher in Jake's company. It wasn't just a job. It felt like I was part of something important, supporting the man I loved and building our future together. On weekends, we escaped the city on his bike, roaring through winding roads and taking in breathtaking views of nature. Those moments, with the wind in my hair and his warmth against my back, were pure bliss. Living nearby, my mother-in-law became a frequent visitor. One such afternoon, while Jake was tinkering in the garage and I was fixing us some coffee, she arrived looking a bit troubled. "There's been some ugly news," she said as she settled down at the kitchen table. Something about a professor at the university involved in a harassment scandal. My heart skipped a beat. Oh, did they say who it was? I tried to keep my voice steady, dreading the answer. She shook her head. No, they didn't mention a name on the radio. But you know how these things go. It's probably all over the TV by now. Nodding, I flicked on the television, tuning into the news. Sure enough, there was a report on the scandal. And as I had feared, my father's face appeared on the screen. The anchor detailed accusations against him, and I felt a cold wave of disbelief wash over me. Turning off the TV, I sat down heavily, trying to process the news. Jake came in, wiping his hands on a rag, and saw my face. "What's wrong, babe?" he asked, his brow furrowed in concern. I swallowed hard, my voice barely a whisper. "It's my dad. He's been accused of harassing a student." Jake's expression hardened for a moment before he came over and took my hand. "I'm sorry, Lauren. That's tough news. How do you want to handle this?" I shook my head, not really sure of anything at the moment. "I don't know. I mean, what can I even do? It's not like we're close anymore." He squeezed my hand, understanding. "Whatever you need, I'm here for you. We don't have to figure it all out right now." I decided to wait and see how things unfolded before making any moves. Whatever decision I made, I knew I'd have Jake by my side, and that was the reassurance I needed to face whatever came next. Life had been peaceful until that unexpected afternoon at work when a familiar car pulled into the parking lot. I hadn't seen my parents in a long while, and the sight of them stirred up a mix of emotions I thought I had put to rest. Both of them looked dramatically changed. The scandal had taken its toll. Mom had lost a lot of weight and looked years older, while Dad appeared broken, a shadow of the stern man he once was. My mother spotted me and rushed over, arms open as if nothing had happened, as if years of distance and disapproval could be bridged in an instant. but I couldn't embrace her, not now. Instead, I stepped back and took Jake's hand, looking for strength in his presence. "Lauren, it was so hard to find you," Mom said, her voice cracking with emotion. Dad, ever the gruff one, cut to the chase, his voice harsh and bitter. "I was accused unfairly, you know. I went to your sister's husband for help, but that bloodsucker wanted a fortune. Your sister sided with him, and now they've kicked us out. We need your help." I stared at them, disbelief and anger swirling inside me. "Help? After all these years, you show up and demand help." "We have nowhere else to go." Mom's voice was desperate. "They've disowned us too. We thought maybe we could stay with you." I almost laughed at the absurdity. Stay with me? After you disowned me? You made it clear I wasn't your daughter anymore. Dad's face turned red, his old temper flaring up. "You owe us, Lauren, after all we've done for you." "That's where you're wrong," I interrupted, feeling Jake squeeze my hand in support. "I don't owe you anything. You threw me out because I chose my happiness over your demands. And now you want what? To just move in and pretend like we're a family." The situation was spiraling, and I could see people watching, a crowd beginning to form. Mom started to cry, her sobs loud and attracting even more attention. "You're being ungrateful after everything we've done for you," she accused through her tears. I took a deep breath, my decision clear. "No, Mom, I'm not ungrateful. I'm free and happy. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them." As we walked away, I heard my dad yelling, but Jake leaned over and quietly told the security team, "Don't let them come here again." The following months flew by, filled with love and peace. We welcomed a son, a new beginning in our growing family. My parents never came back. That day in the parking lot was the last I saw of them, and while part of me grieved for what could have been, I knew I had made the right choice for me and for my family. I'm Amelia, and I've been surrounded with responsibilities since I can remember. With my 2 younger brothers running about and my newborn sister joining us when I was 10, our small house was always a hive of activity. "Could you help change Sarah's diaper, Amelia, honey?" With a voice worn out from working double shifts, Mom would call out. I would quickly drop what I was doing to assist. Everyone, with the exception of Sarah, contributed. It was our usual. She was different as soon as she got there. Dad would dismiss any worries about her conduct by saying, "She's just a baby, let her be." I saw my parents working themselves to the bone to support us all. Mom cleaning homes, Dad at the building site. To keep food on the table and hopes alive in our hearts, they exerted every effort. Being the middle children, my brothers Mike and David were sometimes overlooked in the mix between Sarah's privileges and my obligations. Whenever Sarah threw a fit and got her way again, we exchanged knowing glances across the dinner table. In an effort to escape the pattern of barely making ends meet, I began working as soon as I graduated from high school. The neighborhood diner wasn't very glitzy, but it was a beginning. I hid my college money jar in my closet and put every dime I made into it. Late at night, I would count it, hoping to have enough to enroll in community college courses. My managers were aware of my commitment within a year. After I transitioned from waitressing to bookkeeping, my aspirations of attending college became less unrealistic. Even I was shocked by how determined I was to balance my education and job while attending evening sessions. The fatigue was genuine. On some evenings, I would nod off while reading my textbooks, just to wake up early for another shift. My desire to achieve was further strengthened by seeing Sarah sleep till noon, skip school whenever she wanted, and get away with it. One night, as I was studying in the kitchen at midnight, Dad said, "You're going to burn yourself out." I grinned as I glanced up from my accounting assignment. Maybe, Dad, but I'm heading somewhere. I swear to you. My college degree gave me access to opportunities I never would have imagined. I was employed by First National Bank as a junior analyst, and I approached my work with the same zeal that helped me succeed in school. My boss drew me aside after a few months. She said, "Amelia, I've never seen someone pick things up so quickly. You'll get far here if you keep up this pace." She was not mistaken. I was good with statistics, but I was much better with people. I handled workplace politics with ease, while others grumbled about them. Perhaps I had learned something valuable after all those years of handling family relationships. My brothers, David and Mike, had left home and begun their own lives in the interim. However, Sarah, she was still at home, doing her usual life without any consequences. When Mom called, she would give me updates that I didn't want to hear. She would sigh and remark, "Sarah was out until 3 o'clock again." You know how she is, but I'm worried. Yes, I was aware. I was also aware of the general lack of focus, the parade of boyfriends, and the poor grades. However, it was no longer my issue. Now I had my own place, my own life, and my own objectives. Then came the call that made all the difference. One morning, Mom said, "Sarah is pregnant." The father says he doesn't want anything to do with it and is now in Arizona. I tightened my hold on my phone. Of course, we'll assist her in raising the child. What other options do we have? They would, of course. Even though Sarah was 18 and expecting her own kid, she was still their darling baby. I didn't say anything since I knew what would happen next. "Won't you assist as well, Amelia? Visit us on the weekends. You're quite skilled with kids." At that point, I began to come up with a very impressive list of reasons to avoid spending my valuable spare time caring for yet another child, including pressing job tasks, professional development classes, and client meetings. During one very unpleasant phone discussion, Mom exclaimed, "I don't understand you anymore. You were so helpful once." I corrected her, saying I used to be a child, forced to be helpful. Now that I'm an adult, I have my own life. But Mom family is reciprocal. Or have you overlooked the monthly payment I send? That typically silences them, at least for a while. Sarah's prenatal treatment, baby supplies, and continuing expenditures were all covered by the sizable checks I sent. However, it was never sufficient to gain their acceptance. One day over coffee, my Aunt Lisa said to me, "You know, they're calling you heartless behind your back," claiming that you've changed and grown aloof. As I carefully swirled my coffee, I observed the patterns the cream was making in the dark beverage. Let them speak. In any case, they have never comprehended me. She continued, "They say you're ungrateful." I gave her a direct glance. Why are you not grateful? The honor of caring for their other kids. The chance to raise their grandchild now. Aunt Lisa, I've worked hard for all I own. Everything. That week, he was promoted to senior analyst. Both my pay and the checks I sent home rose once again. However, I maintained my boundaries. No last-minute favors, no emergency childcare, and no babysitting on the weekends. Call me callous, if they will. I had had enough of being the one in charge. Between client meetings and financial reports, romance wasn't exactly a priority. My dating app sat mostly unused on my phone, until that rainy Tuesday night when James's message popped up. Something about his profile seemed different. Maybe it was the genuine smile or the lack of shirtless gym selfies. "I noticed you work in finance," his message read. "I'm actually an investment advisor. Maybe we could bore each other with market talk over coffee." That coffee turned into dinner, which turned into weekends, which turned into 2 years of the kind of relationship I'd never thought I'd have time for. James was patient, understanding about my work schedule. and somehow managed to make me laugh, even after my most stressful days. You know, he said one evening as we walked through the park, I never thought I'd find someone who understands both compound interest and my terrible jokes. Then came the proposal, nothing flashy, just us in my apartment after a home-cooked meal. I can't imagine my life without you, he said, holding out the ring. Marry me? I said yes before he could even finish asking. Introducing him to my family was surprisingly smooth. Even Sarah behaved herself, which was a minor miracle. My parents were overjoyed. Finally, our workaholic daughter is settling down. Mom gushed after our first family dinner together. And did you see how great he is with Tommy? She meant Sarah's son, my nephew, who had indeed taken an instant liking to James. The wedding was beautiful, and married life started out perfectly. James fit into the family like he'd always been there. He'd play with Tommy for hours when we visited, teaching him to throw a ball or build with blocks. Sarah watched, not this apartment. We need savings, security. But we're doing well, he'd counter. Both have good jobs. What are we waiting for? For the right time, I'd insist. One child when we're ready. That's the plan we agreed on. He'd sigh and drop it, but I could feel his disappointment. During family gatherings, I'd catch him looking wistfully at Tommy. Your sister manages just fine, he'd say sometimes, not quite keeping the edge out of his voice. My sister lives with our parents and relies on their retirement savings, I'd reply. That's not what I want for our child. The tension grew slowly, almost imperceptibly, like watching storm clouds gather on a sunny day. You know the rain is coming, but you tell yourself it's still far away. I was too focused on my next promotion, our house savings fund, the 5-year plan I'd carefully crafted. 5 years of marriage and spring cleaning still meant going through James's mess. He never could keep his side of the closet organized. That Saturday morning started like any other, me sorting through old receipts, forgotten gym clothes, and the usual clutter that accumulated on his shelves. That's when I found it, a phone I'd never seen before, tucked behind his winter sweaters. My stomach tightened as I picked it up. Not his work phone, not his personal phone. It wasn't even locked. My hand shook as I opened the messages. The first one I saw was from Sarah. Miss you already. Can't wait until Saturday, when she's at work again. Hundreds of messages, pictures I wish I could unsee, conversations about me. Lol, she's so clueless, always at the office. All she cares about is her precious career. The timestamps went back months. My legs gave out, and I sat there on the closet floor, reading message after message, each one worse than the last. Then I saw it, the message that made my world stop spinning. Baby's definitely yours. Doctor confirmed today, 12 weeks along. I don't remember driving to my parents' house. I don't remember much, except a phone clutched in my white-knuckled grip. Sarah was there, of course. Saturday morning cartoons with Tommy, one big happy family. What the hell is this? I threw the phone on the coffee table. Tommy looked up, startled, and Mom quickly sent him to play in his room. Sarah didn't even flinch. She picked up the phone, scrolled through it casually, like she was checking the weather. Oh, well, I guess you know now. That's all you have to say. You're sleeping with my husband. She shrugged, actually shrugged. We're in love, Amelia. These things happen. And now with the baby coming, James and I want to get married. Once Amelia stops being difficult about it. Difficult? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm being difficult. You're having an affair with my husband. Well, yes, Sarah said, like she was explaining something simple to a child. You never wanted children anyway. You're too busy with your precious career. James needs a real family. I turned to my parents, waiting for them to say something. Anything, to defend me, to condemn this betrayal. Instead, Mom sat down next to Sarah, patting her hand. Amelia, try to be reasonable. Tommy needs a father figure, and James is so good with him. And now, with another baby coming, reasonable. My voice cracked. My husband and sister are having an affair, and you want me to be reasonable. Dad cleared his throat. Well, you never wanted children, honey. And James, he's always wanted to be a father. Maybe this is for the best. When was the last time you even cooked him dinner? Sarah would make a proper wife. I looked at them, my family, all sitting there, defending the indefensible. Sarah sat smug and pregnant with my husband's child. Mom was already planning the next wedding. Dad avoided my eyes, but was clearly on their side. A proper wife, I repeated numbly. Like your precious Sarah, who mooches off you and cheats with her sister's husband. Sarah rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic, Amelia. Just go back to your big office and your important meetings. Leave the family stuff to people who actually care about it. I barely remember the drive home from my parents' house. The world seemed unreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart instead of my own. When I walked through our front door, James was there in the living room, acting like it was just another normal Saturday. Hey, honey, he moved to hug me, that familiar smile on his face. The smile I used to love, the smile that now made me sick to my stomach. I stepped back, holding up his second phone. Want to explain this. The change in his face was instant, first confusion, then recognition, then fear. Where did you find it? While cleaning. You really should find better hiding spots for your affair phones, James. Amelia, I can explain. Explain what? The messages, the photos, or maybe explain how you got my sister pregnant? He tried denial first, like they all do. It's not. I didn't. But he must have seen something in my face, because suddenly his whole demeanor changed. The mask dropped completely. Fine, yes, Sarah and I are together, he snapped. What did you expect? You're never home. All you care about is work, work, work. When was the last time we even had a real conversation about starting a family? Oh, so this is my fault. You cheated because I wanted financial security before having children. You never wanted children, not really. You always had some excuse. The house, the savings, the right time. Sarah actually wants a family. She understands what's important in life. I looked at this man, this stranger wearing my husband's face, and felt nothing but disgust. What's important in life is loyalty, honor, basic human decency. But I guess those things aren't important to you, or my precious sister. Don't act all high and mighty, he snarled. You're just angry because Sarah's giving me what you wouldn't. The divorce papers were filed the next day. I had documentation of the affair, so it went through quickly. My brothers, Mike and David, came to help me move out of the apartment. They were the only ones who stood by me. We always knew Sarah was spoiled, Mike said as we packed boxes. But this is a new low. David couldn't even say her name. They're dead to me, he declared. Both of them. Through my brothers, I heard the updates I never wanted, but couldn't help knowing. James and Sarah got married in a small ceremony. My parents were there, of course, beaming proudly. The baby was born, a girl. They moved into a small house in the suburbs. Tommy started calling James Dad. Mom keeps trying to get us to visit them. Mike told me during one of our monthly dinners. Says we need to be a family again. We are a family, David said, raising his glass. The three of us. That's enough. I nodded, grateful for my brother's loyalty in a world where loyalty seemed to mean nothing anymore. We were the only ones who understood that some betrayals can't be forgiven, some bridges can't be rebuilt, and some families are better off broken. 4 years can change everything. My new apartment overlooked the city skyline, floor-to-ceiling windows, marble countertops, and enough space to finally display the art collection I'd always wanted. The Mercedes in my reserved parking spot gleamed under the garage lights. I'd made it exactly as I'd planned. My brothers visited often, bringing news and rumors. Sarah and James struggling to make ends meet, 3 moves in 2 years, each apartment smaller than the last. But I didn't care. Their life wasn't my concern anymore. Until that Tuesday evening when my phone lit up with a number I'd hoped never to see again. Amelia, James's voice, 4 years older, but still familiar enough to make my stomach clench. Please don't hang up. I should have. Instead, I listened. We need your help, he said, as if he had any right to ask me for anything. Sarah had an accident, broke her leg badly, compound fracture. She's had surgery, but she can't move around, can't take care of the kids. And she's pregnant. Again. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, wondering if this was some kind of cosmic joke. The kids need someone to pick them up from school, watch them until I get home from work. Tommy's getting too big to handle everything himself, and with the new baby coming, he paused. We thought maybe you could help. You thought what? My voice came out eerily calm. They're your nephews, Amelia, your family. Sarah can't even get to the bathroom by herself right now. My family? I repeated. The sister who slept with my husband and the husband who cheated on me. That's my family. Don't be like that, he snapped, his tone shifting from pleading to accusatory. This isn't about us. It's about innocent children who need help. Or are you too selfish to care about them? Too selfish? I almost laughed. That's rich, coming from you. We're struggling here. His voice rose. Do you know how expensive kids are? I'm working overtime just to keep food on the table. We can't even afford a decent apartment anymore. Meanwhile, you're living it up in your luxury condo with your fancy car. So that's what this is about, money? Not all of us can focus only on our careers, he said bitterly. Some of us have real responsibilities. Must be nice, I said, voice icy. Having the family you stole and no way to support them. I replied coldly, sounds like a real dream come true. The kids need parents who didn't build their relationship on betrayal. Goodbye, James. I hung up mid-protest and blocked his number before he could call back. My mother's number showing up on my phone was almost as unwelcome as James's had been. I answered anyway, some old habit I couldn't quite break. Amelia, Mom's voice had that tone, the one she always used when she wanted something. We need to talk about Sarah. She needs help. James called you, didn't he? About her leg? I paced my living room, fighting the urge to hang up immediately. Yes, he did, and I'll tell you what I told him. Not my problem. How can you be so cold? She's your sister. She's struggling with 3 children, well, soon to be 3. The sister who slept with my husband. That sister. Mom sighed heavily. That was years ago, Amelia. You need to move past it. We're family. Funny how family only matters when you need something from me. We've helped her as much as we can. Mom's voice cracked a little, but she keeps asking for money. For the kids, for the rent, for everything. We've gone through all our savings. Your father and I, we can't keep this up. I couldn't help but laugh. So the golden child is finally becoming too expensive to maintain. Don't be cruel. She's never learned to what? Work? Support herself? Take responsibility for her actions? Gee, I wonder why that is. She just keeps having babies, Mom said, frustration finally breaking through. She won't look for a job, says she's too busy with the children. But she's always asking for money, always needing something. Sounds like exactly the person you raised her to be, I said coldly. The princess who never had to face consequences. You have no right to speak to me like that. Mom's voice rose. I am your mother. And whose fault is it that Sarah turned out this way? Who taught her that she never had to work for anything? That someone would always bail her out. We did our best. No, you did your easiest. And now you're calling me because the monster you created is too expensive to feed. You have a duty to help your family. Mom was almost shouting now. After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done for me. I cut in. You mean like supporting my sister when she had an affair with my husband? Or like calling me selfish for wanting financial security before having children? I don't owe you anything. I hung up before she could respond, my hand shaking with 4 years of pent-up rage. The expensive view from my apartment windows suddenly seemed like the best revenge, my life, built exactly as I'd planned it, without their help or approval. Mike called me one evening while I was reviewing quarterly reports. You'll never guess who tried calling me today. Sarah. I already knew the desperation tour was making its rounds. Bingo. Wanted me to help with the kids, maybe loan them some money until they get back on their feet. He snorted. As if they were ever on their feet to begin with. What did you tell her? Same thing David told her yesterday, that some betrayals can't be undone. That what she did to you wasn't just cheating, it was destroying a family. She started crying, saying we were being cruel, that family should help family. He paused. I reminded her she didn't seem too concerned about family when she was sleeping with your husband. I leaned back in my office chair, looking out at the city lights. How did she take that? About as well as you'd expect. Started screaming about how we're all against her, how nobody understands how hard her life is. He chuckled darkly. Guess karma finally caught up with her. 2 weeks later, David brought the news I'd been expecting. They moved in with Mom and Dad. All of them, Sarah, James, the kids, and the baby on the way. Dad's converting his workshop into another bedroom. How are Mom and Dad handling it? Remember how peaceful retirement was supposed to be? Well, now they're full-time babysitters and ATMs. Mom's watching the kids while Sarah recovers, which apparently means scrolling through her phone all day. Dad's dipping into his pension to cover their expenses. I shook my head. They made their choice. Mom came by my place yesterday, David continued. Wanted to know if I'd talk to you about helping out. Said they're overwhelmed. I bet they are. The next day, Mom showed up at my door unannounced. I almost didn't recognize her. She looked older, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. Before I could even say anything, she said, please. Just pay attention. No, I interrupted her. You pay attention. It was all your choice. You made the terrible decision to pamper Sarah. When she deceived me, you decided to stand by her side. You decided to let them live there. Mom, these are your options. Cohabitate with them. And I'll contact the cops if you come to my door once more. Are we clear? I interrupted her once more as she began to speak. Remember that this was your decision the next time you feel overburdened. Instead of choosing the one who always put out effort and acted morally, you went with the one who betrayed her sister. Live with it now. I blocked her phone, the last family number I had left to ban after my brother's, and put an end to her objections. Marcus, the man I had been dating for a few months, joined me for dinner that evening. He was aware of my narrative, the betrayal, and the fallout. He simply listened and understood. He had never hurried or pushed. He leaned across the table and held my hand after I updated him on the most recent family happenings. He remarked quietly, "Family isn't always who you're born to. It depends on who you choose sometimes." I returned his grip while reflecting on my brother's support, Marcus's understanding, and the life I had created for myself. Ultimately, Sarah had just assisted me in determining which aspects of my family were valuable. She had not taken it. I informed him that my brothers will be visiting this weekend. Want to come along with us? His grin was sufficient, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely content with who I was and where I was going. I no longer cared about the drama unfolding at my parents' place. I had my own happiness to preserve, my own family to raise, and my own life to enjoy.